Sometimes a person's heart attaches to the most unexpected place in a way that words can't capture. I never imagined that one day I'd feel so alone, or that I'd find the love missing from my life in the eyes of another soul. My husband, John, and I got married years ago, but over time, the bond between us began to fade. John became so focused on his career that he started neglecting me and my feelings. But at home, there was someone else. Someone who greeted me every day with unconditional love and stayed by my side no matter what. Believe me, this story might stir you deeply and leave you thinking. If you want to know what really happened, just listen. During those long hours alone at home, my only friend was Charlie, our black and white dog with big brown eyes, always so full of love. Most evenings, John came home late, and when he did, he was always exhausted. At first, this saddened me, but over time, I got used to it. Charlie, unlike John, could see what John missed. He noticed the loneliness and yearning in my heart. When Charlie looked at me, it was as if he could see right into my soul. Anytime I felt down, he'd come close, rest his head on my lap, and softly snuggle next to me. His silent but profound presence slowly became a safe haven for me. Sometimes, as I stroked his head, I'd lose myself in the innocence in his eyes, feeling like, in that moment, it was just the two of us in the world. One evening, John was late again, with yet another excuse, just like always. I was sitting alone when Charlie came over and gently placed his head on my lap. As I slowly ran my hand through his fur, I felt something inside me shift, like he was telling me that I mattered to him, that he cared. The devotion he showed was something special, something that touched me deeply. He was there for me, giving me pure love even when no one else was around. That moment was the beginning of something I couldn't even admit to myself. The bond between us kept growing, and each day I felt more connected to him. Charlie's pure, innocent love both frightened and fascinated me. Yet I couldn't turn away from these feelings. I'm not sure if I have the courage to share the rest of what happened, but I do know this bond would change us both. I found myself spending more time with Charlie every day. After John left for work in the morning, I'd take my coffee and sit on the porch, calling Charlie to sit by my side. He'd quietly nestle against me, resting his head on my legs. His presence brought a calm, peaceful silence. It felt like the deep loyalty I saw in Charlie's eyes wrapped around me, filling a void I hadn't realized was so big. One day, I realized just how complicated my feelings had become. The bond I felt wasn't just simple friendship. Though I tried to keep my thoughts in check, every time I met his loyal gaze, I felt a warmth in my heart I couldn't ignore. The emptiness left by John's coldness and neglect was gradually filled by Charlie's presence. One afternoon, as I sat on the porch, tears suddenly began to flow. I couldn't keep this emotional weight inside anymore. The loneliness and lack of love in my life had left a deep wound. When Charlie looked up at me, I felt like he somehow understood. Or maybe I just wanted to believe he did. It felt like he wanted to be there for me. I held him closer. He leaned his head against my shoulder, letting out a soft whine, as if comforting me. That simple, quiet moment felt so soothing that I didn't want it to end. How strange it was to find such comfort in the loyal love of a dog, especially when I needed it the most. After that moment, my bond with Charlie reached a different level. Having him by my side not only helped me, but seemed to heal my soul. I didn't know how to handle these complex feelings, but when he was there, everything seemed easier, even if just for a while. I didn't know where this was going, but if you're curious to see how this story continues, I promise it's going to surprise you. One evening, after John was late coming home, I sat alone on the porch again. Charlie was next to me, a little way off, slowly licking his fur. Suddenly, I felt something stir inside me. I couldn't explain it, but it was like everything was taking a different turn. I was so lost in thought that I didn't notice Charlie's movements. All of a sudden, he ran up to me and gently placed his head on my lap, giving a soft bark. He came over so urgently that I sat up, a little surprised. His eyes were fixed on me as if he was trying to tell me something, and at that moment, it was as if everything shifted, like I'd realized something important. Charlie's attention toward me didn't feel like just ordinary loyalty. It was as if he had claimed me as his own, and his behavior seemed a little different. He quickly came closer, nudging his head against me. In that moment, I felt a strange warmth inside, and his loyalty left a lasting impression on me, but it was a curious feeling, like I was sensing something I hadn't experienced before. As I leaned in to pet him, that warmth grew stronger. Every touch seemed to fill a little more of the emptiness within me. Trying to understand this unusual connection, I noticed something different in his eyes, a sparkle I hadn't seen before. For a moment, I felt oddly connected to him, as if time had stopped. After John came home, I struggled to shake off these thoughts. Charlie's gaze started to linger in my mind in ways I hadn't anticipated. I realized that my feelings toward Charlie had grown into something deeper, something more than simple friendship. The bond between us felt almost beyond what words could capture. And with that, I found myself caught in a swirl of new, complex emotions that changed everything. One evening, John came home unexpectedly early. I'd gotten so used to spending my evenings alone with Charlie that it almost felt like a surprise. I was on the porch with Charlie, his head resting on my lap, lost in the softness of his fur. For a moment, as I stroked his head, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. This simple yet profound connection brought me a comfort I hadn't felt in a long time. But just then the door opened. John stepped in with his briefcase in hand, his eyes landing directly on me and Charlie. He paused, surprised to see us like that, but his surprise quickly turned into anger. He approached us, and in that moment, it was as if time stopped, with him standing there, seeing the closeness between Charlie and me. "Oh, what are you doing?" John asked, his voice trembling. I froze, caught between shame and guilt, feeling like he somehow knew everything. Charlie looked up and barked in John's direction, which only seemed to fuel John's anger. "How could you do this with a dog?" he shouted. Seeing the disappointment in John's eyes affected me deeply. All my tangled emotions seemed to surface in that moment. Was there a limit to the love and attachment I felt for Charlie? John's expression only added to my inner turmoil. "John, I couldn't find the words. I didn't know what to say. The emotions Charlie stirred in me were so complicated, and trying to explain them felt impossible. But the pain in John's eyes silenced me. How could I possibly explain everything we'd been through? John saw the fear in my eyes. I could tell how devastating it was for him to see me like this with Charlie. His mind seemed to be racing, but one thing was certain. This could be the end. A bond like this with a dog was no longer something he could understand or accept, and he was too hurt to try. "I can't forgive this," John said, his voice shaking, before quickly walking off to his room. In that moment, my fear grew even stronger. What had I really done? My connection with Charlie had spiraled beyond control, and now John had walked away, leaving me with a painful emptiness. I didn't know what to do or where to turn. John's departure felt like a blow, leaving a deep ache within me. His gaze, which seemed to aim at separating me from Charlie, had cut to my core. But in that moment, I realized something important. The bond I had with Charlie was the most genuine and comforting relationship in my life. John's harsh words had shown me what real love truly was. The pure, unconditional love in a dog's eyes seemed more valuable than anything else in the world. A few weeks later, John and I decided to divorce. It felt like the right decision. The years with John had finally come to an end, and there was no longer an emptiness in my heart. Charlie was by my side, giving me that pure love I needed, yet something still felt missing. I loved Charlie. I gave him my all, but there was something more I couldn't quite define. One day, I decided to adopt another dog from a shelter. I thought it would be good for Charlie to have a companion. This new dog would be another loyal friend, bringing love and companionship into our lives. I brought home a friendly, energetic golden retriever named Daisy. She quickly adapted to being around Charlie, and they became great friends. With Daisy around, I felt even more fulfilled. It was like the remaining space in my heart had finally been filled. I was no longer alone. Each morning, as I took both of them out for a walk, their happy gazes were everything. I realized how much joy it brought me to love them both equally. This new setup felt like one of the best choices I'd ever made. Every moment with Charlie and Daisy brought me peace. Each dog opened up a new world of love for me. Charlie never lost his old, deep loyalty, while Daisy's lively spirit filled every moment with joy. In the evenings, as the three of us sat together at home, I felt like the happiest person alive. The love I saw in their eyes was unlike anything a human could offer. All the emptiness in me was now filled with the love of Charlie and Daisy. Their presence gave me strength and happiness. Having Charlie and Daisy by my side gave me so much more than just the experience of adopting pets. These two loyal friends truly made me happy. The bond that grew each day reminded me how beautiful life could be. I was no longer alone. Their love transcended everything, and I felt it more with each passing day. And maybe there was nothing else in my life that offered this much pure, unconditional love.